Hello, welcome to the latest edition of the TU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by John Tranchina, our TU beat writer, here to talk a little TU sports. We're recording this on Thursday around noon. And John, I guess this is going to be our home for the football season is Thursdays. So we'll get together and talk a little TU football every week.
Yep.
And looking forward to it. So let's start with Rick Dixon. He kind of met the media in a kind of informal-ish luncheon yesterday. What came out of that?
Yeah, there were several things coming out of that. Actually, some of the more interesting things, and I'm probably going to write about this next week, but some of the more interesting things where there was some focus on some of the new fan experiences that are going to happen at the games, where there's going to be like a more open tailgating policy, I guess you could say, on the big field, where everybody has the tents and stuff, and that's going to be like food free for everybody, as opposed to you having to belong to certain groups to be able to partake in that or to even get into their tent areas or whatever. So there's going to be apparently a lot more open strategy for that, which I thought was pretty cool. They were also talking about a new little, like, there's a new, what's it called, mini field behind the stadium, like in that area back where the concession stuff is on the left side. There's they've actually constructed a new mini field, like replica of the field for kids to play on and whatever. Apparently there's going to be more parking for an extra 1,000 parking spots for games, which I think should help make the fan experience a little bit better. There's a new student section. There were a number of announcements about that. They were even talking about bringing in the Dallas Cowboys DJ, and he's consulting with them about how to kind of help pump up the crowd and get people going. And not sure if he's actually going to be there at all, or if he's just helping out and kind of, advising the TU people. So there's a number of things with that. So that's one thing. And then the other thing was they introduced two new members of the athletic department. Pooh Williamson, former basketball player, is now joining the former TU basketball player from Beggs, who is now joining the department as an associate AD for development, which I think is also a fancy way of saying he's going to help fundraising as well as hold other roles. And then
Is that new, or did they just announce it?
I think that's new. Yeah, he's just starting.
So. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's interesting. That's good to have Pooh back at TU. That's great.
Yeah, and apparently there's a real close connection between him and Dixon, and he was they were both excited to get to work together and move on to this chapter. So yeah, so he's back. And then the other thing was that Jimmy Stewart I guess they were teammates here way back, him and Dixon, and he is coming back as a person to, like, in a mental health capacity, to help student athletes deal with mental health issues and kind of direct them into the different avenues that they might need help with. So
is this a new position?
That is a new position as well. Yes, they just created that for him.
Very interesting.
Yes, Garen Emig is going to be writing something about that in the coming days. So that was interesting. I mean, that's an area that doesn't necessarily get a lot of notice in sports, and how the pressures that student athletes are under, and how they handle it, and how that affects them on the field, and all kinds of things like that. So they have these resources now that they're pushing towards it and trying to not make it a stigma type thing, but everybody can benefit from it and deal deal with it. So yeah, that
Yeah,
was
no, that's great to hear, and I wonder how many schools are doing that. I don't know how widespread this is. That's very
yeah.
interesting. I'm sure Garen's column will kind of educate us all a little bit, and maybe he'll kind of tell us about it. But that's interesting, and poo coming back.
Mhm.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, well, so anything else noteworthy out of that?
Those were the big things. That pretty much was the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, so in a more formal press conference setting, you had a chance to sit down with Philip Montgomery.
Mhm.
What were some of the highlights from his session with the media yesterday?
Yeah. Well, one of the big things that I was discussing with him was the makeup of the offensive line. As we know that there's going to be basically 5 new starters on the offensive line, and that's an area probably the biggest question mark on this team at this point, and will be a big determining factor as to how things actually shake out, how well those guys come together as a group and stuff. So we talked about that quite a bit and kind of discussed how, they also have a new position coach. Steve Farmer is a new offensive line coach, and he talked a little bit about that. There were also some discussions about other players and positions, but that was the big thing from my takeaway from Philip Montgomery. That's actually the topic of the article I'm writing today that will be in tomorrow's paper about the offensive line.
So, is Philip concerned? Like, what were the thoughts that he expressed to you?
He seemed pretty excited about it. He acknowledged that the uncertainty is there. He thinks they're going to be really good and that it's going to go well, but he acknowledges that the fact that they haven't played yet in a real game, and a lot of them are first time, just about everybody are first time starters. In fact, yes, they all are first time starters. So the fact that they haven't actually been through the wars yet, he acknowledges is slightly concerning, but he has the confidence that they're going to be able to do the job, and he's happy with how they're coming along and how they've blended together as a group and assimilated into the team and picking up the offense and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the uncertainty is there definitely.
Did Davis Brin address this at all yesterday during his media session?
Yes, he spoke about that as well. He says he's confident in how they're coming along, and he thinks they're going to do well. And he says a lot of that building the chemistry had to do with them hanging out a lot off the field, as well as taking a lot of reps and practice and stuff to get used to each other. But it's interesting how they all seem to have this mindset where a lot of becoming closer off the field and becoming friends is a good part of building that chemistry on the field. That seems to be a common theme with everybody, and that since that part seems to be going well, there's that feeling that they're going to do well on the field too.
So before you and I started recording this, you said that Davis had a funny moment with the media yesterday. Why don't you share that?
Yes. So he and Darren Ray were up there talking, and there was some. Darren Ray was a high school quarterback and switched to play safety when he got here to Tulsa, and so that people were asking Davis whether he played defense in high school, and he was talking about how he played a few snaps in the secondary himself, and he also returned some punts, and that was like a really moment for people, where especially there was a funny reaction from K Ray when he heard that, and he looked at him and was like, oh yeah, okay. There was a that would have been funny to see kind of thing. But so yeah, it was a little lighthearted moment from him where he seems to say a lot of the right things, and you don't necessarily see a whole lot of his personality a lot, but that time he that broke through a little bit, and it was a funny moment between the two of them.
So what's the situation looking like at backup quarterback?
Yeah, that could be a concern as well. I mean, I would say that's the one position where if the starter goes down with an injury, these guys could be in trouble. Although, so it's at backup quarterback, it looks like it's Braylon Braxton is going to be the primary guy, although there's also Roman Fuller. They're both, Braxton is a redshirt freshman and Fuller is a redshirt sophomore, but I think Fuller maybe saw little action last season, but they're both don't have any, very inexperienced in that sense. And they've looked pretty good in practice and in the scrimmages, but it's in moments here and there. And I just have that concern where, you put in an unproven person who's never been on the field in a meaningful college moment. If Davis goes down, we could have some issues, but those are the two guys right there for the backup. And Montgomery he wasn't concerned about it. He said he would be confident with them, but he also, again, acknowledges that inexperience would be a factor. And hopefully that doesn't come to fruition and we never find out.
Sure. So what are you seeing at running back? They lost, Shamari Brooks, big time production from him. Is it going to be the Deneric Prince show this year, or are they going to mix it up a little bit? What are you seeing at that position?
I think it's going to be a group effort. It's interesting. You mentioned Deneric Prince. There's been pretty much 4 guys who have been working with the first team. And I would say based on how the reps have been handed out in the scrimmages and in the practices, he seems to be 4th on that list, which is a bit of a surprise to me, honestly. It looks like it's Anthony Watkins. Steven Anderson has, after not really showing up a whole lot in my mind, and at least not catching my eye a whole lot in earlier practices, in the scrimmage the other day and in some of the recent practices, he has looked really good. As a guy who's 6'2" and 269, he's that huge punishing guy who's going to power through and really be I guess maybe a short yardage type of guy, but like he's looked really good. Jordan Ford has looked really good.
I'm still stuck on 269.
Yeah, can you believe that?
Oh my word.
Yeah. And seeing him barreling through the line, I'm like, I had this like, all right, what is this guy's size? Check the roster for that.
Sounds like a misprint. Yeah.
Right.
He could really hurt somebody.
Yes. And
anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just heard 269. I was like, is he serious?
I know, right? And there's that that's a big contrast when you look at Jordan Ford, who's also in the mix there, but he's 5'10", 178. So he's the fast, quick cut guy. And then you have the Anderson who's going to barrel through people. And then, and you got Watkins, who I guess is their most returning yards from last season. Watkins had 634 yards. Anderson had 219 in 45 carries, so he didn't get the ball a whole lot, but he was still in the mix. And Prince, I'm not sure what's going on there, but he seems to have fallen down the chart a little bit. But they're all going to be in the mix, and it'll sort itself out.
See who emerges,
right,
kind of going forward. Yeah, it sounds like they got a lot of different options to play with at least.
Yeah, so in that sense, I'm pretty happy with this group. I think that's going to be a strong, collectively, that's a strong group.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else on your mind? We've kind of delved into a lot there. Anything else that you want to mention?
Not really. They've officially changed tactics to focusing on the first game in Wyoming, and now it feels like we're finally getting to the season. It's kind of been a slog for those guys, a lot of workouts for over 3 weeks of practice, and now they're getting to the good part. So I'm excited for the season start.
Well, and that's a good segue, John. So, like I said, we'll be coming at you every Thursday during the season. Next week, we'll get down to the nitty gritty and really kind of break down what TU fans can likely to expect from this season. I mean, we don't really know, obviously, but John will do his best to kind of explain what might be coming. And like you said, at Wyoming, 2:30, and that's next Saturday, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, August is always a weird time, man, because it's great reading the stories and, kind of getting to know the new team. But now it's just like, okay, let's play a game. Let's do this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah,
I'm sure the players are tired of hitting each other, and they want to go out and finally play where it matters.
100%. All right. So you can check us out on Google, Apple, and Spotify. You can download us for free. Again, this is the TU Sports Extra podcast. We'll be coming at you once a week. And we also have some other podcasts. Barry Lewis and I do one on high school football. Gary Niemig, Bill Haston, our two columnists, do a podcast every week. There's also an OU podcast and an OSU podcast. So we get you covered on podcasts. So find one, check us out. John, appreciate the knowledge, and we'll talk next week.
All right. Sounds good.